Maya Brooks in Phoenix took home about $4,500 a month. About $3,000 was already spoken for in regular bills. About $15,000 sat on credit cards. Student loans were sitting around $10,000. And before the first of month bills hit, the balance was $170. Maya Brooks is an anonymized label for the public Reddit case in the research file. The original username is not the story. The shape of the month is they were 24. 2 card minimums were waiting, student loans were waiting, rent and regular bills were waiting. And the question they posted was not the dramatic finance influencer version of struggle. It was simpler than that. How do I survive the month? That is the moment this video is about. Not a luxury haul, not a coffee lecture, not the fantasy budget where every dollar sits politely in line until you feel ready to assign it. A real paycheck can look fine when it lands, then feel gone before you ever really touch it. So the useful question is not, why did this person fail? The useful question is, which dollars were never free in the first place? Because the bank app shows one number. The calendar knows another. And for 3 beautiful seconds after payday, the bank app can make the paycheck look bigger than it is. Here is the payoff. By the end, you should be able to separate visible money from usable money. You should be able to see the fixed cost first bite, the bill calendar mismatch, the debt minimums, the irregular essentials, and the mental accounting trick that makes a balance feel spendable when it is already claimed. This is not a story about someone who cannot handle money. It is a story about a paycheck with too many hands on it. And the bright part is this. Once you can see the hands, the month gets less mysterious, not easy, not magically solved, less foggy, and less foggy is where relief starts. The first mistake is treating available balance like available money. Available balance means the bank has not removed it yet. It does not mean rent forgave you. It does not mean insurance forgot. It does not mean the card minimum decided to be generous. It means the money is still visible. That is a different thing. Think of payday like a kitchen table. The deposit lands in the middle. Before you buy anything, before you open a food delivery app, before you make one good or bad choice, several envelopes are already waiting. Housing, transportation, utilities, minimum payments, groceries and gas, the bill you forgot because it renews every few months, the car repair you do not know about yet, even though the car is already aging toward it. The paycheck does not disappear all at once. It loses freedom in layers. That is why payday can feel so strange. In the morning, the deposit looks like relief. At lunch, a bill clears. In the evening, another one is pending. By the weekend, the balance feels almost rude. The brain says, I just got paid. The calendar says, yes, and most of that money had appointments. A normal budget asks, where did the money go? The paycheck map asks the better first question. Where was the money already supposed to go? That difference matters because shame is a terrible accounting system. Shame notices the sandwich. Shame notices the small purchase you can picture. It often misses the earlier claims that turned the sandwich into a crisis. If you want money to feel less tight, the first win is not always spending less. Sometimes the first win is making the number honest earlier, not the number the bank shows. The number left after the next wave of known claims has already spoken. Most videos about disappearing paychecks love tiny leaks because tiny leaks are easy to scold. Cancel this. Skip that. Stop buying the thing that makes your Tuesday slightly less annoying. Sometimes that advice is useful. Quiet recurring charges do add up. But it becomes insulting when the largest bites are not tiny at all. The latest official annual spending composition from the Bureau of Labor Statistics was for 2024. It should not be dressed up as live spending in May of 2026, but it still shows the shape of the household budget. Average annual spending was $78,535 per consumer unit. Housing alone was $26,266. Transportation was $13,318. Food was $10,169. Healthcare was $6,197. Personal insurance and pensions were $9,973. Those numbers are not a template for your life. They are a scale check. The first bite is often not a lot. It is the place you sleep, the way you get to work, the food baseline, the insurance premium, the medical cost, the payroll deduction, and the vehicle that makes the paycheck possible. That is where advice can turn into blame if it is lazy. If fixed costs take the first bite, small cuts can still help at the margin. They just cannot honestly be sold as the whole answer. A household whose rent, car, insurance, and debt minimums land in the same week does not need a lecture that starts with streaming. It needs a map of the first bite. Which costs are fixed for now? Which are fixed only because nobody has renegotiated them? Which are fixed by contract? Which are fixed by habit? Which are survival costs wearing the costume of choices? Once that is visible, the person can stop prosecuting every tiny purchase and start reading the actual structure of the month. Now comes the part that feels almost unfair. Two people can earn the same monthly income, owe the same monthly bills, and live through completely different stress because of the calendar. One person has rent near the first, utilities near the 10th, insurance near the middle, and card payments after the second paycheck. The month still costs money, but the pressure is spread out. Another person has rent, insurance, card minimums, and utilities stacked inside one narrow window. On paper, the two households are twins. In motion, one has breathing room and the other has a panic week. This is why monthly math can look fine while weekly life feels broken. Annual income is a photograph. Cash flow is a film. The damage happens between frames. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has bill payment research that makes this less mysterious. In its bill pay research, people cited bills being due before they got paid and pay timing not lining up with bill timing as important reasons for falling behind. That survey was not a national measurement of every household, so do not stretch it into one. But as mechanism evidence, it is exactly the point. A bill due 2 days before payday can behave like a more expensive bill. It can trigger a late fee. It can force a credit card charge. It can make groceries smaller and more expensive because you buy in emergency mode. It can make a person feel undisciplined when the real problem was timing. Here is the first practical relief lever. Some due dates can move. Not all of them, not every landlord, not every creditor, not every utility. But some lenders, insurers, phone providers, and service companies will let you shift a date. The same Consumer Financial Protection Bureau report said changing bill due dates to line up better with income could help some consumers manage cash flow. That is not glamorous advice. That is why it is useful. You are not trying to become a different person by Friday. You are trying to stop 4 bills from crowding the same doorway. Debt is not only a balance. On payday, debt is a reservation. A credit card balance from 3 months ago becomes a minimum payment this week. A medical bill becomes a portal login and a due date. A car repair that kept you employed becomes a monthly reminder. Student loans become another claim on a paycheck that has barely settled in the account. That is why debt can feel like the past keeps arriving with a handout. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York reported in February of 2026 that total household debt had reached $18.776 trillion at the end of 2025. Credit card debt was $1.277 trillion. Those numbers do not mean every debt is buy shelter. A student loan can buy access. A credit card can cover a true emergency. But once a balance becomes a required payment, the paycheck has less room to negotiate. Minimum payments are tricky because they look small next to the balance, so the brain tries to minimize them. Only $150. Only $200, only this month. But payday does not care whether the minimum looks small next to the debt. Payday cares how many small claims arrive together. The opening case had credit card debt around $15,000, plus student loans around $10,000. The point is not to turn that person into a warning poster. The point is to notice what happens when debt timing lands on top of rent timing, food timing, car timing, and everything else. The paycheck loses optionality. That is the cleanest word for it, optionality. Money can technically be present and still not be flexible. Once enough minimums attach to enough future paychecks, a household can earn income and still feel like it is working for older emergencies. So the paycheck map needs a separate debt lane. Not because debt is a moral category, because debt has due dates, and due dates get paid before wishes. The next category is where many budgets quietly lie. Irregular essentials, not entertainment, not luxury, not the stuff people fight about in comment sections. Irregular essentials are expenses that are not monthly, but they are not imaginary. The tire wears down, changes, a school fee appears, the pet gets sick, the annual membership renews, the car registration arrives, the appliance stops cooperating, the family visit requires gas, the dental appointment finally cannot wait. A monthly budget can look balanced if it only includes monthly bills. Then an irregular essential arrives, and the person feels like the plan failed. But the plan did not fail because life became random. It failed because it treated non-monthly as unlikely. The Federal Reserve's newest economic well-being report was published in May of 2026, based on an October 2025 survey of nearly 13,000 adults. It found that 59% of adults had at least one major unexpected expense in the prior 12 months. Vehicle repair or replacement was the most common, at 30% of adults. That is not a rare edge case. That is life-having maintenance costs. The same report said 63% of adults could cover a hypothetical $400 emergency using cash, savings, or a credit card they would pay off at the next statement. That leaves a lot of households where a $400 problem is not just annoying. It changes the next paycheck. So, the paycheck map needs an irregular lane. The goal is not to pretend every household can instantly build a perfect emergency fund. That would be fake relief. The practical first step is smaller. Stop calling predictable irregular expenses surprises. If the car is necessary for work, car maintenance is not a surprise category. If teeth are part of the body, dental care is not a surprise category. If insurance bills renew, renewal is not surprise weather. The number can start tiny. The habit matters because it changes how the paycheck is interpreted. Instead of, I had extra money and then life ruined it, the map says, some of this money belongs to the next irregular essential I cannot name yet. Subscriptions are not the whole story. They are just a clean example of how a paycheck loses attention. A one-time purchase asks for a decision. A recurring charge asks once, then keeps voting every month. That is the danger. Not that every subscription is bad. Some are useful, some replace larger costs, some make work easier, some make life better. The problem is that recurring charges become quiet citizens of your paycheck. They keep their seat unless you notice them. A charge for $12, another for $9, a storage plan, a streaming plan, a delivery plan, a gym, an app that felt urgent during one busy week. None of them looks like the villain alone. Together, they create a strange feeling. You did not go shopping, but the balance still moved. That is why subscription audits work best when they are not framed as punishment. The question is not, what joy should I remove from my life? The question is, which old decision still deserves a vote on this paycheck? That wording matters. A subscription you actively use is not a leak. It is a chosen bill. A subscription you forgot is not a personality flaw. It is an old yes that never expired. The paycheck map puts recurring charges in one lane so they can be seen as a crowd. Seeing the crowd changes the emotion. One charge creates annoyance. A crowd creates leverage. Maybe you cancel two. Maybe you downgrade one. Maybe you keep them all and simply stop pretending the money is available. The relief comes from truth first, optimization second. This is also where the bank balance illusion gets worse. Many recurring charges do not arrive on payday. They arrive later, after your brain has already made plans for the visible number. So the map should not ask only what is in the account today. It should ask what will still be there after the charges you already agreed to have finished voting. Now the psychological part matters. People do not experience all dollars as identical, even when a spreadsheet says they are. Rent money feels different from grocery money. Tax refund money feels different from paycheck money. A bonus can feel more spendable than a normal deposit, even if both are just dollars. A credit card can feel less real than cash until the statement arrives. This is mental accounting. Finance textbooks sometimes treat it like a mistake. Sometimes it is. But for real households, mental accounting can also be a tool. The National Bureau of Economic Research has a working paper by Michael Gelman and Nikolai Rusanov about mental accounts, payment cards, and consumption. You do not need the paper to understand the lived version. The label on money changes how money feels. That is why one big checking account number is emotionally dangerous. If rent money, grocery money, debt money, and real spendable money all sit in one visible pile, the brain sees one pile. It does not automatically feel the future claims. It feels possibility. Separate labels make the same amount of money behave differently. A bills account, a rent bucket, a card payment lane, a grocery lane, an irregular expense bucket. Even a note in a spreadsheet can help if it makes invisible claims visible before the purchase moment. This is not about pretending categories create more money. They do not. A label cannot fix low income or high rent, but it can stop the bank app from overstating freedom. That is why the Honest Paycheck Map is not just math. It is attention design. You are designing the first thing your brain sees after payday. If the first thing is one large balance, the month starts with an illusion. If the first thing is already claimed money, separated from flexible money, the month starts with a more useful truth. The goal is not to become perfectly rational. The goal is to stop asking a tired brain to remember every future bill while staring at one tempting number. Here is the routine. When a paycheck lands, do not start with the balance. Start with the next pay cycle. Ask one question. What must this paycheck cover before the next paycheck arrives? That question fixes a surprising amount of confusion. If you get paid every 2 weeks, this paycheck is not responsible for the whole month equally. It is responsible for the claims that land before the next deposit, plus any share you need to hold back for larger claims later. So the map goes in order. First, fixed claims before the next paycheck. Rent share, utilities, insurance, phone, childcare, transportation, any bill with a date. Second, survival spending for the next paycheck. Groceries, gas, medicine, the basics that keep life moving. Third, debt minimums before the next paycheck. Not the emotional debt total. The required claims that can charge fees or damage credit if ignored. Fourth, irregular essentials that are not monthly but are real. A small holdback for car, medical, school, home, travel, renewal, or whatever category keeps ambushing the month. Fifth, recurring charges that quietly renew before the next paycheck. If they are worth it, name them. If they are not worth it, remove their vote. Only after those lanes are named do you get the real spendable number. That number may be smaller than the bank balance. That is the point. A smaller truthful number is calmer than a larger lying number. The larger number creates fake freedom, then panic. The smaller number creates boundaries, then fewer surprises. It does not solve every problem. It does something more basic. It stops the month from ambushing you with information you already had. If the real spendable number is painfully small, the map still helped. It told you the problem is structural, not that you randomly became irresponsible on Wednesday. If the real spendable number is bigger than expected, the map helped there too. It showed that some of the panic was fog. Either way, the paycheck becomes easier to read, and once it is easier to read, the next move becomes less emotional. The most underrated version of relief is moving a date, not because it makes bills smaller, because it can stop bills from arriving in the worst possible order. This is the practical checklist. Look at the 7 days after each paycheck. Which bills hit there? Which ones create the tightest week? Which ones could move to a calmer window? Which ones cannot move but can be prepared for earlier? Then separate institutions into 3 groups. Group 1, easy movers. Some credit cards, subscriptions, phone providers, insurers and service bills let you change the due date online or through support. Group 2, possible movers. Some lenders or billers may allow a different date, but only after the account is current, only once per period, or only after a billing cycle. Group 3, fixed for now. Rent, certain loans, some utilities, and some local obligations may not move at all. The point is not to force every bill into a perfect calendar. The point is to reduce crowding. If 4 claims hit in 1 week and one of them can move, that is not a motivational breakthrough. It is still useful. It can prevent a late fee. It can reduce credit card float. It can make grocery timing less chaotic. It can turn a panic week into a tight week. That matters. Money advice often hunts for dramatic transformation because dramatic transformation sells. Households often need boring friction removed. 1 date moved, 1 automatic charge cancelled, 1 insurance premium split differently, 1 debt minimum scheduled after the second paycheck instead of before it, 1 small holdback for the car category before the car asks for it. These are not inspirational. They are operational, and operational is exactly what a disappearing paycheck needs. A full emergency fund is a great goal. It is also far away for someone's staring at $170 and tomorrow's bills. So use a smaller target first, the one-paycheck buffer. The one-paycheck buffer does not have to mean 1 full paycheck sitting untouched. For some people, that is the later goal. The first version is more modest. It means the next paycheck is not forced to solve every bill immediately on arrival. A little money is already waiting for the first claims of the cycle. The deposit lands into a system with some slack. Payday is not the only thing standing between the household and the fee. You build that kind of buffer in unglamorous pieces, a refund that does not instantly become lifestyle inflation. A canceled charge redirected for 1 month. A due date move that prevents using the card for groceries. A small side payment held back for an annual bill. A grocery week planned before the panic purchase. A subscription downgrade that becomes a permanent $10 or $15 of slack. Tiny slack is not nothing. When money is tight, tiny slack changes behavior. It can give a person time to buy groceries normally instead of desperately. It can let a bill clear without turning the whole week into crisis mode. It can stop 1 credit card swipe from becoming next month's minimum. That is why the buffer should be connected to the map, not treated like a separate motivational project. The map shows where the pressure is. The buffer goes where pressure keeps causing damage. If the first week is the danger zone, buffer the first week. If car repairs are the repeat ambush, buffer the car lane. If debt timing keeps forcing credit card use, buffer the days before the minimums. A buffer is not just money sitting there, it is a pause button placed at the exact part of the month that keeps starting fires. There is an important caveat. Sometimes the map does not reveal a clever fix. Sometimes it reveals that the paycheck is genuinely too small for the claims placed on it. That is not a failure of the map. That is one of the most valuable things the map can tell you. If fixed obligations plus survival costs already exceed income, the answer is not a prettier budget. It is a structural problem. Housing, transportation, medical cost, childcare, debt, income, or some combination of them. If the map shows the problem is mostly timing, due date alignment can help. If it shows the problem is mostly recurring charges, an audit can help. If it shows the problem is irregular essentials, a small sinking fund can help. If it shows the problem is debt minimums, the next step may be a debt plan, a nonprofit credit counselor, a hardship call, a balance transfer. only if it truly lowers risk, or another route that deserves more care than a quick video line. If it shows the problem is income, the honest conversation is not discipline. It is earnings, benefits, hours, negotiation, job change, public support, household structure, or lowering a fixed cost when that is possible. The map is not magic. It is diagnosis. That is why it is better than shame. Shame says, you are bad with money. Diagnosis says, this paycheck is being consumed by fixed costs, debt timing, and an overloaded first week. Those are very different sentences. One traps the person inside identity. The other points to a lever, or at least names the real constraint. And naming the real constraint is not pessimism. It is the first honest step out of fog. Go back to Maya's opening case. A 24-year-old took home about $4,500 a month. They had about $3,000 in regular bills, around $15,000 in credit card debt, around $10,000 in student loans, about $170 visible before first-of-month bills. The shallow reading is, how did the money disappear? The better reading is, how much of that money was ever unclaimed? Regular bills took the first bite. Debt minimums took another. Student loans were waiting in the background. Groceries, gas of the month still needed space. The calendar crowded the stress near the first. The bank balance showed what was present before the next claims finished arriving. That does not make the situation easy. It makes it legible. And legible is the first form of relief. Once the paycheck is legible, the next questions improve. Can any due dates move away from the first week? Which minimums are required before the next paycheck? And which ones are just emotionally loud because the total balance is scary? Which expenses are fixed by contract and which are fixed by inertia? Which irregular essentials keep returning and need a lane? Which recurring charges are still worth their vote? What is the real spendable number after the calendar has spoken? Notice how different those questions feel from, why am I like this? The questions get more useful because the target gets more specific. The problem is not a mysterious disappearing paycheck. It is a paycheck whose claims stay hidden until the month reveals them in the most stressful order possible. The paycheck does not really begin when the deposit hits. It begins when the lease is signed, when the car becomes necessary, when the card balance rolls over, when the insurance policy renews, when the subscription keeps its seat, when the bill date lands before the deposit, when the tire slowly wears down, when the grocery baseline rises and never fully comes back by the time payday arrives. The paycheck is not a blank page. It is a page with claims already written in light pencil. That is why the visible balance can be so misleading. The better number is not, what do I have right now? The better number is, what is left after the calendar has spoken? That question is calmer. It is less flattering at first, because it usually makes the paycheck look smaller. But it is kinder in the long run, because it stops setting you up to feel surprised by bills you already knew existed. The honest paycheck map is simple: fixed claims, survival costs, debt minimums, irregular essentials, recurring charges, then real spendable cash. Then, slowly, a buffer placed where the month keeps breaking. No shame ceremony. No fake promise that a calendar fixes low income. No pretending every problem is a mindset problem. Just a more truthful first number. And sometimes that is the first practical relief. Not more money yet. Not a perfect system yet. But the end of the 3-second lie. The paycheck did not disappear before you touched it. It was visible before it was available. Once you know that, you can stop chasing the fog and start redesigning the route